Testing.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much indeed, Nadine, for introducing us. I'm going to introduce our fearless panel tonight, and then we're going to start some questions around the notion of bravery. So we have, if we go around from the other end, around this way, we have Kyle Nell, who is head of the Innovations Lab for Lowe's, which is doing some really cool stuff, and I'm sure many of you will be aware of that. We have Diane Hessen, who founded Communispace, which was a real revolution when it set up, probably about 10, 15 years ago. John Kieran, a brain juicer, the chief juicer there, and I think that's the most innovative company, isn't it, according to everyone who votes for Green Book. And good, yeah, that goes a long way. And we have John Pulliston, who has done some of the best stuff, I think, in terms of looking at how to engage participants more and make our surveys much more interesting. So that's a little bit about the panel. John and I, probably 2 or 3 years ago now, founded the Ginny Valentine Badge of Courage Award, and I'm absolutely delighted that you're here today as well, John. So over to you to ask the questions.
Hello? Oh, I've got that. So we are going to recruit you. You need to bear in mind that this is a two-way process. We have a task for you at the end of this, so be watching for that. I'm going to ask Diane the first question. When we started with the idea of a Bravery Award, I did ring up some rather large research companies who told me in rather incredulous tones that bravery was the last thing that they thought there should be awards about. So the first question for you, Diane, is why do you think that bravery is so important in research?
Well, you know, as I always tell my children, perfection is highly overrated. And seriously, I mean, I think for those here who were trained as market researchers, very often what you're told is that you're the voice of truth. And we learn a lot about perfection. We learn a lot about what a good sample is. We learn a lot about what is statistically significant, what is a valid methodology, and so on and so forth. And I don't really think it gets us much. You know, I think when we win, we're obviously connected to the business and all of the things we've been talking about today, but I think when we win, we're inspiring and provocative, and we take risks. And certainly if it's not when we win, it's when we do something that's really memorable for our organizations. And so bravery, I think, is the ultimate manifestation of that. And usually something that is very scary and risky to somebody else, you know, it's just not that difficult once you do it. I think some of the things that each of us have done that others might think were very brave, at the moment that we did them, just seemed like kind of the logical way to go.
So to ask a much more specific question, within Communispace, if someone does something brave, that's something that you want to draw attention to and not hide away?
Well, you know, adventures, we have 7 values. We don't have 5 Bs, we have 7 values. One of them is adventure. So we're trying to reward people for taking risks and for making messes and all of that. And I think some of the reason for that is that, you know, when you're a startup, everyone does that. I mean, adventure and bravery is a way of life. Now we have 500 people, and, you know, every once in a while, our COO will look at me and say, Diane, we've become this big, bumbling, boring bureaucracy full of process and policies and all of those things, which is just the worst possible thing that anybody could say to me. So I think that especially if you're working in a larger organization, figuring out how to hold on to that sense of adventure is just really, really important. There are lots of different ways you can do it, but I'm pro-bravery.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Diane, for that. And that's very useful, I think, for us to all think about in terms of both small and large organizations. John, I know you've got a particular take on bravery and how it relates to innovation, which of course is what this whole conference is about. So talk us through how you think those two concepts are related.
I
feel like we should all be about to burst into song. I don't know. It's the microphones. Can you sing? What should you...
Plus, last time I was on a stage with John Kieran, he pulled his pants down, which I thought was sort of brave, although at the time I would have picked a different word for it.
Diane, it was a phase. It was a phase I was going through. I've promised family and colleagues that I'm over it.
And we're not going to be
Notice
doing
he
that
didn't-
kind
he
of
didn't
bravery
deny it.
today.
It is true. It is true. I was trying to demonstrate one of the 7 Ekman emotions, surprise. I think what I ended up doing was also demonstrating pretty much every other one: disgust, contempt,
But you weren't covering your backside.
No, and it did produce the best tweet of the year, my favorite tweet, which is: "The chief juicer has just mooned us. I think we liked it." And that was in New York, where I thought I was going to get arrested. I mean, in America, you kind of get arrested for that sort of thing. No? Okay. No.
You got arrested for what your shorts looked like.
Well, I mean,
They were red, white, and blue.
So I wasn't going to bring up the mooning, but since you have, I mean, it is silly, I know, and I have been rapped and reprimanded for it by my own board. But I think playfulness is actually part of, I mean, we are talking bravery, and Ginny was, kind of that to a T. But actually, she was playful as well. And I think all the best researchers, we just saw John talking about sort of making something engaging and playful. And actually, the two things often go together. The most playful is a light thing, and bravery is this serious, heavy. But actually, I think if you couple them, they're very good bedfellows. Because you kind of get overexcited in the playful mode to try something. Because innovation is just about trying something. Something that no one's done before. Something that you think has an edge, even if it's a bit quirky or it's not that serious. And then I think you get enrolled in it and you get excited by it. And if it actually seems to work, then the bravery part comes. Because you've actually got to then face the critics. You've got to do something which everyone will say is wrong. And I was doing a webinar yesterday where I invoked a story, one of my story about predictive markets, which John mentioned. So the first time that we did a predictive market back in 2005, and I took it to Simon Godfrey, who was on my board, and he's a proper serious market researcher, statistician. And I excitedly I said, look, it seemed to work. We took this crowd of 500 people and we played this sort of game where they were buying and selling shares. It seems to really work. And he was like, John, you cannot share this. I mean, really, you are going to destroy any credibility that Brainjuice has built up as being a proper research company if you basically break the 3 golden rules of concept testing. And we had a bit of a Barney about it. And he said, okay, if you do this 10 times in 10 different categories, then and only then I will sort of put my name to it. I'll support you. And that's kind of what we did. And I suppose my take to finally actually answering the question is that you have to be playful and you have to basically love failure, because it's all the stuff that doesn't work along the way. The paradox of success is you need failure to achieve it, and I think you need a bit of blood and guts to actually then take it out in the face of everyone going, that's wrong, that's just so wrong, you shouldn't do it like that, and let the data actually then speak for itself.
Okay. I want to bring in John Poulston at this point because, by the way, before today, how many people, show of hands, had ever heard of the Bravery Awards? Okay. How many people hadn't heard of them? Yeah, don't feel bad about that. These are very, very young. This is the 3rd year that we've been doing them, and John Poulston has a particular role because he came along the first year that we did them in London, and he was a judge the 2nd year in New York, that was last year, when we did the Bravery Awards. So this is a very, very new concept, and I just wanted to ask you, John, what kind of got you about this? Because you blogged about it in the 1st year, you were a judge in the 2nd year. What keeps you coming back?
I went to the first one, and it was just been to a sort of, a classically pompous market research event with, these grand sort of like laid out bits of food and wine afterwards. And I went along to this little pub, and there was a few ropey sandwiches. But it was the most amazing night of my life in market research terms. I actually experienced some emotion. And emotions I'd never necessarily associated with market research, things like pride. And that tingling feeling that you got. And what they were doing was people were standing up and telling simple little stories. This one man had nominated his own daughter for a Bravery Award for setting up a business where she got a sofa and took it around different shopping centres around the country and tried to sort of like do interviews. And it was like a completely wild and wacky idea, but she persisted with it. And she persisted with it. And she sort of built a business on the back of that. And that is brave. And that was amazing. And she's not won an award for anything. She's not necessarily going to become a millionaire on the back of the idea, but she got off and did it. And that was, so we see that from that extreme, there was this one company in Afghanistan trying to do market research where someone got shot. And now that is super brave. Two people. And you think, well, I sat there in a room, I was almost crying at one point, and I thought, well, this is what the industry needs. We so often focus on success, and innovation is not about an organization that's got a thriving innovation process. Is not about rewarding success. It's rewarding the people that have an idea, no matter how stupid with it, and run with it and do something about it, and accepting that they might fail. And I think that we don't do enough to celebrate the people that try and don't necessarily win, and because that's the thing we need to be encouraging, the trying bit. Have I said enough?
I think that was fantastic. And we got all the emotion back from 2 years ago.
So yeah, I wanted everyone. I thought it would be a good thing for the whole industry and to sort of get more involved in. And I think that we should be putting, this sort of event should be almost like a black tie event, almost ultimately, that everyone turns up to and should be really proud to be a part of.
I think John was wrong in one point, actually. I'm not sure we did have sandwiches, and we made everyone pay for their drinks. So, it was done on a shoestring. But thank you for those memories anyway, John. And I'd like to bring in Kyle, because Kyle was a winner of one of the Ginny Valentine Bravery Awards last year. So, Kyle, tell me a bit about, does that make any difference? What did you feel about that when you were nominated?
So now I run Innovation Labs, so now I guess I'm innovative. But before that, I was running international research for Lowe's, which is an extremely conservative Southern American company, extremely conservative. And so when I was trying new things, and I think you all probably can relate to this, as you bring things up and you're like, this seems very obvious. And I think you see that with a lot of other people that try new things. It seems very obvious, to your point, Diane. All the antibodies in the organization appear and they attack you viciously. And it comes in a lot of different forms. It comes in outright opposition. It comes in this passive-aggressive, sure, but not do anything, and indifference, and all these things. And it's very taxing on the person. And you think, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to advance. I'm expending a lot of energy and a lot of emotion on this stuff. Is it really worth doing, right? Is anybody even, it's not that does anybody care, but is it even worth it, right? Because it didn't seem to, at the time, did not seem to be advancing my career at all. In fact, I was making more enemies than friends. And then on the other side is, there was no sort of feedback, right? And so to get that award came at a right time. I felt like I was working in the dark on a lot of things, and that no one was really getting what I was trying to do and all those things. And it really not justified what I was doing, but at least the very, very little, someone else was saying, this is good. Keep going. We see you. We're happy you're doing that. And I wasn't getting that elsewhere. And it wasn't just that push, but other things like that in this group, and seeing other people that are have done wonderful and amazing things that I can look up to, really help push things along. And ultimately, that not caring about what the antibodies were doing, because of the support of the Ginny Valentine Award winners, not so much the award itself, but it's seeing this group, right? So it's just the award is one thing, but having that support led to a series of events that's completely changed the way Lowe's looks at stuff, and led to this completely new group that I run, which is amazing and fun, and it came all as a direct result of that. So I'm very, very grateful for it. Just the other thing too is that we talk a lot about making research cool, right? Or at least I do, or we do. And we don't do it. Like last night at dinner, I was surprised at somebody I really respected saying, well, research will never be sexy. What what a sad thing to say. Like, what a depressing thing to say. We have the coolest jobs on the planet. We get to figure out why people do stuff and try to help them make better decisions that usually are in our favor. But how cool is that? Like, if we presented that to the young or the most attractive people to come into our industry, but we don't. What we do is we say, oh, we're going to work you behind a computer, and good luck making PowerPoint presentations and all these things that we're talking about. But instead of talking about the tactics, we should be talking about the stories about the researchers in Afghanistan. We should be talking about the Johns and the Dianes and the people that are really have pushed it and have done different things. And I think that would attract a much different group of people and the kind of people that we need to make marketing research relevant, because we are very near the point of demise. And I see that on the client side, and I don't see that others do. But by not just accepting bravery and innovation, but actually recognizing it and nurturing it is the only way this industry is going to survive in any way that it is right now.
Okay, thanks very much, Kyle. I think it's probably best, because we're going into a drinks thing afterwards, that please feel free to come and ask us questions for more information. But what I want to explain a little bit about this and how you need to get involved, because we're coming up to the third year. The awards will be made in June of this year at Atlanta, at the next Innovation Exchange Conference, the one which is happening in Atlanta. So we've got 4 or 5 months. So this is how it works. The idea is that we have a crowdsourcing site which is already set up, and I'm sorry that we can't flash that on the screen now, but if you are within reach of Twitter, we will make sure that it is broadcast across Twitter several times in the next, before the conference finishes, so you've got every opportunity to get a hold of it, but come and ask us, we can give you the link. And the idea is that you nominate. One of the challenges here is that most award schemes are sclerotic. They're just totally screwed up, because who gets on a panel to decide who gets an award? How does all that stuff happen? It's all behind closed doors, and it basically is the principals of agencies or senior heads of departments. They got all the awards. The whole point about courage here, and if you look on the site, the website, at the people who've won already, these are people who've been young women who've started businesses. We've mentioned people from the third world. Ezomar have really got on board with this, because this is about the only award that you can win if you're a struggling researcher that's doing surveys among peasants being persecuted by Colombian guerrillas. There is no other research award scheme for you but this. So that's why it's important. But you understand, if you don't nominate, there's no one to then go into this crowdsourcing mechanism on the basis of which the judges can make a final decision. So please, the thing you need to think about is, do you know someone who's done something brave? Then please nominate them. We also allow, if you think you've been pretty brave, find someone that knows it to nominate you. If you run a research organization and you don't know about people being brave inside your organization, there's a sign that they might not have permission to be brave, then give them that permission. If you find it, this is a chance that a junior member in the organization can win. Someone in their first year in research can win an award. That's the whole point. And that's hopefully that gives the message that, frankly, we can't do this without you. This is a very young award scheme. We've only been doing this. This is the third year. And this kind of blows everything else out of the water. One of the pleasures of what the Research Liberation Front, which was the original organization which then kind of moved into doing this, was that we go up alongside big research conferences, pompous ones, and we do this kind of cool stuff around the outside. I think actually this is the first, going with Innovation Exchange is the first research event we've gone inside, because we think our values are close enough. So the revolution is cooling already, so maybe you need us to get more radical. Maybe we should be on the other side of the road, being a little bit more piratical. You get the idea. It's supposed to be slightly irreverent. It's supposed to be slightly out there. But the thing we don't want to do is to think that bravery is no longer important, because bravery is absolutely fundamental. And there are people who've already presented today who are winners of that Bravery Award. I can see, you didn't present today, did you, Alison? But she talked about how she'd been burgled and burned out and everything else. She carried on setting up again, had a business stolen off her. She still came back again, so I remember that story. Betty Adamu, who was just up here early this afternoon, she got an award because she just quit a safe job and came up with a stupid idea. Gamification. Who's ever heard of that? Okay, so she was one of the first award winners. So this is genuinely something to recognize people that you think are cool because they're stepping out, taking risks. So please, 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 I want to say a big thank you to the panel for
John,
coming.
I do remember the first Research Liberation Front, in the UK, in Brighton, where the police were called,
Yes.
I kid you not, because Fiona and the others were standing with placards outside going down with boring research. I mean, it was all sort of, it was a joke. And the hotel obviously thought it was a proper kind of protest, called the police, and that's the sort of thing. We need to be banned more often, I think. You know.
So if you want to join the revolution, come and get involved with Ginny Valentine. Can we say a big thank you to our panel, Kyle, Diane, John, and John. And please, please nominate. Thank you.